So thank you all for coming to today's session of Smart Living. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we're meeting today, the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. Smart Living Ballarat is a series of free monthly workshops put on in collaboration between BREAZE and the City of Ballarat. It's been running since 2016, so 9 years. And today's topic is ethical investing. And if I could make everyone sit down and watch one smart living session, it would be this one, because I really think that this is the biggest impact that we can have on the type of world that we want to live in. So I decided to host today myself. I'm Ellen Burns, I'm the coordinator of Smart Living Ballarat. And I did wonder, how am I going to do this? Am I going to get a financial advisor to come in, or am I going to get somebody from a bank or somebody from a super fund? But I really wanted to avoid promoting any one service. This is not about telling you the best bank to choose or the best superannuation fund or the best financial planner. This is really talking about, as broad as possible, the topic of ethical investing. I am going to have some examples of ethical banks and super funds and that kind of thing today, but I didn't want to focus on any one product. So that's why I've decided to be the speaker myself. I've put a lot of research into the presentation today, and I put it together in the last couple of weeks. So all of the figures are right up to date and really current. I am going to share a couple of websites at the end that you can go and have a look at for more information. But yeah, let's get into it. I will give the disclaimer again. I'm not a licensed financial advisor. So this is general advice only. Past performance is not indicative of future results. This is when I did a really fast talking down the bottom there. And all investments carry risk. So there's no investment that's a sure thing, and that's true across the board, not just with ethical investing. Obviously, it's the whole kind of sector. But I do have some figures in the presentation today to be specific. So what is ethical investing? First of all, I had my monthly radio interview with Brett Mack on 3BA yesterday, and he had to Google what ethical investing was before the interview, because he didn't know. He had no idea, even though it turns out he is with an ethical bank because his wife worked for them. It's basically investing in a way where profit is not the only goal. You actually are looking at other factors as well, including your values and the values of the places where you're putting your money. So that often involves a thing called negative screening and a thing called positive screening. So negative screening is avoiding industries that you don't want to support, fossil fuels, tobacco, weapons, gambling, that kind of thing. And then positive screening is seeking out investments that support industries that you do want to support, which often include renewable energy, climate action, healthcare, locally owned businesses, or also businesses that operate with good governance or employment practices. So that's avoiding modern slavery. It's businesses that have women on the board, not just men. It's all sorts of things, and it will depend on the person. It is a very personal thing, the values that we choose to seek. Responsible investments account for about 36% of the investment market in Australia at the moment, so it's not a small sector. And there is a thing called ESG as a framework. So E stands for environmental issues, which can include pollution, climate change, water, waste, that kind of thing. S stands for social issues, which can be, supporting local communities, employee, employment practices, health and safety. And then G stands for governance. So good business ethics, a good way of operating your business. So you might see ESG as a acronym, and that's what it stands for. So that's kind of the framework in general that is used when we're talking about ethical investing. There's a really interesting document, From Values to Riches 2024. So it's up to date as of last year. It was put together by the Responsible Investment Association of Australasia, which is Australia and New Zealand. And they have a bunch of research into ethical investing and what people are actually looking for when they're making ethical investments. So I thought these couple of graphs were really interesting. You can see the one on the left has the top environment and social issues that people want to avoid. The number one is actually animal cruelty. So for years, you know, we've been avoiding cosmetic brands that do animal testing and that kind of thing. That's obviously like a big issue for people. Second one is human rights abuses, then goes to gambling, tax avoidance, tobacco, weapons and firearms, animal testing again comes up there, environmental damage, pornography, investment in armed conflicts. Weapons is another one that a lot of people don't want to put their money towards. So as you can see, it's not just about fossil fuels and climate action. It is quite a broad section. On the graph on the right, top environmental and social themes Australians care about. So not just that they're trying to avoid, but in general that they're trying to support. Renewable energy and energy efficiency comes up the top, just above healthcare and public health. Healthy rivers and oceans, sustainable water management, zero waste and circular economy. So a lot of things that people are caring about when we're talking about ethical investing. The benefits of ethical investing, there's three really big ones that I see. The first is that the positive screening, so the seeking out things that you want to support, being the change that you want to see in the world. You're using your money to grow ethical businesses and industries, and helping build a better world just by choosing where your money is kept. Just to go back to the general definition, the presentation today mainly focuses on banking and superannuation. I will be talking about direct investments at the end. But it's an interesting topic because for a lot of people, their bank or their super fund is a bit set and forget. You know, a lot of people my age grew up with the Dolomites, you know, Commonwealth Bank coming around to your primary school and getting you to sign up for a bank account. And a lot of people just never left Commonwealth, you know, and it's possibly the reason why it's the biggest bank in Australia. They really, you know, got to us young, and for a lot of people, they don't really think about who they're banking with. They just kind of have a bank account and they think of it potentially as just a bucket of money where they put their money and then they get it out when they want it, and think of it as a static kind of thing, but it's actually not static. The money that we're investing in our banks and super funds is very active. They are taking that money and they are investing it on our behalf and then passing back some of the profit in the form of interest payment is basically, you know, what we're talking about. So for most of us, most of our money is either in a savings account or it's in our superannuation. Unless you're the type of person that gets their money out in cash and puts it under the mattress, which is a small portion of our society. I used to work at a bank and I saw plenty of people come in and get their what do you call it, pension out in cash and take it home and put it in a jar or something in the cupboard or under the mattress. There are people that do that. But for most of us, we either keep it in a bank account or we have a lot of our money in super. So this is why it's the biggest impact that we can make, because for us, it might just be sitting over there and we're not even thinking about it. But in reality, it is being active. It's being used to support things. So it's really important that we make sure that it's supporting things that we want to support. We're making a conscious decision of where our money is going. So as well as supporting things actively, there's also the negative screening. So wanting to divest from unethical investments. We live in a capitalist society. Money is very important, and businesses chase profits. That's just what they do. So if we take our money away and say, I'm not giving you my money because I don't like the way that you're treating it, they will change the way that they treat it because they want your money. And that's just the way that our society works. So it's incredibly effective to boycott certain businesses and industries. They will change the way that they're doing things because They see the direction that things are going. They see that people are moving away and taking their money away, and they will say, okay, we'll do the things the way that people want us to do it. And the third important thing about ethical investing is that it does still make you money. Obviously, you don't want to sacrifice everything. Well, you might, but you don't have to sacrifice profit to ethically invest. It's actually thought that ethical investments are more stable and more profitable over the long term. And part of the reason for that is because ethical business practices is the way that our world is going. Not just, moving away from fossil fuels, moving towards renewable energy, but also moving towards sustainable business practices, women on boards, that kind of thing. That's the direction that we're going in. And so over the long term, it's a really good investment to put your money in these ethical businesses. Also, because businesses that are run well tend to go well, just basically. So, first section is about ethical banking, and I will be talking about some specific banks, but again, I'm not trying to promote any one particular bank. As we go through a few of the examples, you'll see kind of how they differ and how they kind of stay the same. So in general, when we're talking about ethical banks, we're talking about banks that look into that environment, social and governance framework of I've got baby brain. I'm like forgetting. They operate with social responsibility, environmental sustainability, and transparent governance. They avoid funding harmful sectors, and they often put money back into the community and positive projects as well. So first bank I want to look at is Bank Australia. We do still have a Bank Australia branch, don't we? It used to be right near Central Square. They moved. I think we still have a branch. We did have a branch. It was right next to Central Square. I think. Yeah. It's Australia's first customer-owned bank, which means that every customer is a shareholder in the bank. It's not listed on the stock exchange. Other people can't buy shares in it. Every customer of the bank is an equal shareholder. So every customer has one share in the bank and has voting rights in the AGM. So we've got some savings with Bank Australia, and we get emails saying they recently did a merger, and they said, you vote on whether we do the merger or not. Here's the information. All our members vote, and if you say no, we won't do it. Say yes, we will do it. So they are actually a collection of smaller customer-owned mutual banks and things like that, kind of a conglomerate, and they are still merging with smaller, they're kind of bringing more smaller organisations together. They don't pay executive bonuses or dividends. All the profits go back to the customers in the form of the best interest rates, no fees, things like that, and other causes, including a conservation reserve that they own in Western Victoria near Horsham. So it's a 2,111 hectare conservation reserve. They're a certified B Corp. 100% of their employees are located in Australia. They're certified carbon neutral by Climate Active and run on 100% renewable energy. They do have a net zero target of 2035, and they invest up to 4%. I think last year it was 2%, so it varies between 2 and 4% of their annual profits into an impact fund that goes towards donations, sponsorships, and the conservation reserve as well. So they fund, what they do fund, customers, clean energy transition, not-for-profits, affordable and accessible housing, and green and sustainable investments. What they don't fund, fossil fuels, live animal export, arms industry, gambling, and tobacco. little bit more information about the conservation reserve, because that is, you'll see each bank kind of has a different flavour of like what they do with their profits, and this is one of Bank Australia's big focuses, is this big conservation reserve. They've done a count home to 251 native plant species and 283 native animal species. It's under a conservation covenant with Trust for Nature, which means it can never be developed. And they manage it in partnership with the local traditional owners in the form of that land council and their neighbours and the CFAs to make sure that it's not a fire risk and things like that. The next bank I want to look at is Australian Mutual Bank, very similar to Bank Australia, where it's a collection of smaller customer-owned banks that join together to make Australian Mutual. And as you can see, quite similar to Bank Australia in terms of it's a customer-owned bank. Every customer has an equal share, voting rights. It's a certified B Corp. 100% of employees are in Australia. They're carbon neutral. They run on 100% renewable energy, and I believe they have a net zero target for 2040. And they have the Australian Mutuals Foundation that they started in 2016. They don't fund fossil fuels, live animal export, gambling, arms, tobacco, and deforestation. You will see that the list of what they don't support is quite similar, because it's very clear what most people care about. The Australian Mutual Fund donated in the last financial year $250,000, and they have 3 focuses. So one of their focuses is Barnardos, focusing on Australian children and youth, food programs, school programs, things like that. Another one of their focuses is Southeast Asian and South Pacific countries, that they do their work through partnership with the Asian Confederation of Credit Unions. And the other focus for them is natural disasters, so flooding and bushfires and things like that. So they have, 3 focuses, $250,000. It is a lot of money. It's not as big as 4 or 2% of profits from Bank Australia. I will just say that. So, you know, that's something to keep in mind, but because they're a customer-owned bank, again, they're not siphoning off profits to shareholders. It's all going back to the customers within the bank. Great Southern Bank is the largest customer-owned bank in Australia. And again, it's kind of a group of smaller credit unions and mutual banks that have come together, certified carbon neutral. Great Southern Bank, their kind of flavour, if you like, is affordable housing. So they've got a real focus on affordable housing, and their main purpose, their purpose statement, is to help every Australian own their own home. So they've got a real focus on home loans and things like that. They provided, I think that was last year, $2 million in long-term financing to National Affordable Housing to support the Victorian Buy Assist program. And they have other initiatives as well. So they've worked with, wait, do I have that in a picture? No. And they've worked with another company to do upgrades of solar and water tanks and things like that on public housing. They do a whole range of stuff, kind of all focused on that section. So a little note about customer-owned banks, because the last 3 banks I've shown you are customer-owned banks. There is a association, Customer-Owned Banking Association, COBA, that has a bunch more information. They actually have a list of basically every customer-owned bank in Australia, if you want to check that out. They say that there are 56 customer-owned banks, this is as of last year, which actually represent 73% of basically banks in Australia. So by volume, it's actually most of the banks in Australia. But compared to the big 4, it actually only represents 8% of household deposits. So you can see the unbalanced nature of banking in Australia, that most of the banks have not most of the customers. The big four or the big five are serving most of the customers in Australia, which is really, really interesting. So it's not that there's not many to choose from. I could have had slides about 56 different banks to show you all the customer-owned banks. There's a lot to choose from, and I'm sure they all have their own different flavour and their own focus of what they choose to focus on. But kind of what I got from this was that any of those are a better choice than the big ones. So it doesn't seem like you can go far wrong as long as you're choosing one of the kind of customer-owned banks. They all seem to be very, very ethical and based on doing what's right for the customer rather than shareholders and CEOs. So they also offer more competitive rates and better services. They're not focused on profits. All the profits go back to the customers. I did just want to talk about Bendigo Bank, because Bendigo Bank's quite interesting. They have kind of two halves of what they do. They have Bendigo Bank, and then they have the community banks, which is a different model. And we have a community bank here in Buninyong that also service Ballarat. So it's very relevant for those of us living locally. So they started this model in 1998, and there are now 307 community bank branches across Australia, mostly in Victoria, but they do have them in other states. And the way that it works is the community branches keep 50 to 80%, depending on the branch, of the profits. They kind of send the rest to Bendigo Bank as their parent organisation, but they keep the majority of the profits themselves and reinvest it back in the local community. They're actually on the share. I saw a investment article when I was researching this that was saying, oh, it's really not good because it's affecting the share price of Bendigo Bank, because the community branches are growing at a much faster rate than the rest of Bendigo Bank, and it's affecting the shareholder profits. So that was quite an interesting article to read, that they were saying it's a negative thing that the community banks are going so well and they're so popular and they're more profitable than the normal branches. And isn't that a problem for the shareholders? I found that quite amusing.
So do they have to have voting to the share? Do they have individual shareholders like with other banks?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how that works, because it's a bit of a different model. I'm not sure. I don't know of another bank that does it this way, that there is a larger parent bank that is listed on the stock exchange, but then these branches are community owned. It's a
very different with the other banks who close some branches for towns, and then things like that.
Yeah. Well, one of the big things with the community banks is that there is that real focus on having a physical branch with physical, people that are community members that you can go to and talk to, which is the drawback of some of the other community-owned banks, is that they don't have that in physical branch locations. So that's one of the good things about this kind of community bank, is that it might not exist in your community, but when it does, and it does for us because there's one in Buninyong, they're not going to get rid of their branch, because that's the whole point, is to have a physical branch that's there and it's got the presence in the community. So this is some figures from a little. Oh, this is from the Bendigo website. So this is 2.25 million, not in Buninyong. This is actually across the whole Bendigo Community Bank, reinvested in 2024. You can see how it's kind of grown every year. Started very small in the early years, and now it's very, very popular. But this is some more detail about the Buninyong Bank. This is my mother-in-law, Claire. She volunteers at Buninyong Primary School in their Ready, Set, Grow gardening program. And this is a photo of Kelly Bevan second from the right there, she's the kind of community engagement lead at Buninyong Community Bank. So this is a photo of Buninyong Primary School. In 2024, Buninyong Community Bank, literally just the local branch, funded 65 community projects totaling $345,139. So in my mind, when I compare that to the 250,000 from the total big bank earlier on, this is a really impressive kind of figure. And the Hidden Orchard actually got donated some money for a storage shed by Buninyong Community Bank. And because it was less than $1,000, we didn't have to go through a grant application or anything. They just said, yep, we'll just give it to you, which was just awesome. So that's a couple of the programs that they supported last year. SALT, sport and life training, mental health training, the Little Things social and emotional wellbeing program for young people from migrant and refugee backgrounds. You can find out more about what they supported on their website, but all of these are programs either in Buninyong or in Ballarat, so it's directly going back to the local community. Non-ethical banks, just to call them out directly. This is from Market Forces website. If I click that link, it'll go to Market Forces, but I'm a bit scared about what that'll do to the screen sharing, so I'm not going to do it. But if you want to go to the Market Forces website, it actually has a list of all the non-ethical banks and all of the ethical banks. And the ethical banks is a much longer list, I can tell you. These are basically the big five that are on the non-ethical side, and it will tell you their position on funding fossil fuels. So ANZ has committed to funding $35 billion to fossil fuels since 2016. This is as of 2023. So you can see in 2023, they committed 2.6 billion. Commonwealth, 23.9 billion since 2016. Macquarie Bank, 1.3 billion in 2023. NAB, 2.4 billion. Westpac, 1 billion. So as you can see, these are big, big numbers that these banks are pumping into fossil fuels. Yeah, it's like the big four and then Macquarie. So, oh, okay, well, lucky you came today. And I just wanted to include this slide as well. So this is an example of the interest that these banks are paying out on their savings account, because I want to show that you're not necessarily making a sacrifice by making a swap to one of these banks. I've just included the banks that I've literally talked about today. Obviously, there are a lot more, but there's only so many that I can include in a presentation. So this is kind of, I was trying to look for the highest interest rate that they offer. Bank Australia got 4.35 on their bonus saver account. Australian Mutual has 3.9, but they actually have a 4.75 on a youth account, which is under 17s, I believe. Great Southern Bank, 4.5, but they also have a 4.75 youth account. Bendigo Bank, 4.15, and then you see the big four, or the five, because I put Macquarie as well. And it kind of looks like they almost like make sure that their interest rates are aligning. I found it very interesting that they're all 4.25 apart from NAB, which is 4.15. Some of them have these kind of introductory rates that I think they make sure are a bit higher, trying to get you in. So 4.45, 4.45, 4.6 Macquarie offer, but only for 4 months. So it's one of those deals where you're like, come bank with us, and for the first 4 months, we'll give you a really good interest rate, and then we'll just hope that you just stay with us forever. So very smart, and interestingly, not something that the customer-owned banks offer. They just, it seems like they just try and do the best interest rate and just keep it there. And as I said, I got these figures last week, so they're accurate as of now. And yeah.
You know, with Bank Australia, their bonus saver I think, is up to 100 grand, and once it's over 100 grand, then
it goes down slightly. Yeah.
Do you know if that's the same with what rate's done, for example?
They're all slightly different. So for most of these accounts, because they're the highest interest accounts, a lot of them have like, oh, you have to pay in $100 a month, or you have to pay in $500 a month. I couldn't really include all of that detail here because they're all slightly different. But I just wanted to just try and make it as simple to compare them as possible. So they all do have some caveats, I guess, is the best way to say it. Obviously, the youth accounts, you have to be under 17. So none of us, oh, actually, Caspian could, we could open an account for Caspian and get some good interest. But yeah, it was interesting to me that in general, the customer in banks are higher. And as I said, not promoting them, but we do have a savings account with Bank Australia. And one of the things that I noticed was when the interest rates were going up, they emailed us every time the interest rate went up, and they said, we're increasing the interest rate on your savings account. I also have an account with ANZ because I actually used to work for ANZ quite a few years ago. They didn't do the same thing. They didn't raise the interest rate as the interest rates were going up. Nothing. They just kept it the same. So I found that really, really interesting. That I almost got sick of the emails from Bank Australia going, oh, we're putting it up 0.25. I'm like, just do it. I don't need to hear about it every time. But going down because the interest rate. Yes. Yeah. So, and that's what makes me think, they're doing the max interest rate that they can because it's so responsive to when the RBA is going up or down. Whereas, yeah, those big banks, they just kind of. They can't be bothered to change. Yeah. 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 Exactly right. They're relying on people being lazy or busy, to be honest. Like, we're all busy. Who's got time to, I mean, I've got time, obviously, looking through all the bank's websites over the last couple of weeks. But I've done it so you don't have to. That's why, but most of us don't have time to sit down and compare, what interest rate. There are a lot of comparison websites on the internet. The only thing I'd say with that is just be careful that they are comparing all the banks, because sometimes they just go, oh, here's all the banks that are listed with us, kind of thing. So just read the fine print there. But the big banks really, Grace nailed it, where they spend a lot of money on marketing and they have these introductory interest rates that sound really good for 4 months or only for 5 months, and they just rely on people opening a bank account and then leaving it and forgetting it. When I worked for ANZ, and this is not dodgy, it's all above board, they used to have these introductory interest rate open a new online saver account. They used to have Chinese New Year interest rates only at certain branches in Melbourne that had a big Chinese population. And I was friends with a lot of the sales guys and women, and they had KPIs for opening accounts. So they were incentivized to open a lot of accounts. So I would open a new savings account every time there was a new promotion of, here, get your introductory, interest for 4 months, open an account. After 4 months, open a different account, close it. And I had all the time in the world, because I worked for a bank, to be doing that kind of thing. But so you can do that. But for most of us, we're not operating in that way. We're opening the account, we're just leaving. So hopefully out of today's presentation, you just think about it once, make the conscious decision, open a bank account, and then you can leave it, knowing that it's in somewhere that's going to be doing the best thing for you and raising the interest rates when they go up and only putting them down when it goes down.
Yeah, and I think that will be financial planners who they're working with too.
Yes.
You're being advised, and a lot of businesses, they trust financial.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going to bank for financial planning, and I'm like one of those people. This is when I was working in Melbourne, and our pay was paid into a NAB account. So they opened a NAB account.
Yeah.
For each of the
Wow. Yeah.
So I've got it, 40 years later.
Yeah.
And so I went to the NAB for financial planning at a certain time. And I fessed up that I already had an MLC. It was kind of a big fund, super, it's MLC. And when he said I would have got an MLC, he totally lost interest in me because he was obviously paid by NAB MLC. I'm not sure who it was, but I was already customer, so I didn't need to convert.
Yes.
So we really didn't.
So it didn't count towards his KPIs and his sale targets. Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking too, like I'm with the mutual bank. A while ago, I sold one house, moved and I downsized, and I put the money different in the bank. And one day my bank rang me and they said, oh, we noticed you've got this large amount of money just in everyday account. And we wanted to let you know that if you moved it into this other account, you get a lot more interest.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yep, I'll do that. Thank you. You know?
Yeah.
Like, I was amazed they wanted to ring me and say, we can help you to get more interest.
And that'll be usually because they've got a sales target of they need to open a certain number of new accounts, but it benefits you as well. Yeah. I found it interesting when I worked for a bank. I had this really regular deaf customer, and he was the same. He had $40,000 sitting in an everyday account, not making any interest. But because he was deaf, nobody had ever bothered trying to communicate to him to open an account. And I used to just chat to him, writing things down on a piece of paper, but that took longer than, you know, churning through people. So I was able to open a savings account for him and actually getting some interest, but nobody had ever broached it with him before because they couldn't be bothered taking the time, basically. So that's our banking section. We can do more questions at the end. And if you're watching online, chuck your questions in the chat. Try and keep moving though, because it's a lot of information in this presentation. So the next thing I want to talk about is superannuation. The 30 biggest super funds invest about 9% of members' investments in the 190 worst companies expanding coal, oil and gas, which is over $140 billion of Australians' retirement savings. Super is an interesting one because, again, a lot of people just think of it kind of like a bank account. And a lot of them, they open the superannuation fund when they get their first job, whatever super their first job tells them to open, depending on what industry they start working in, and they just keep the same super for the rest of their lives, or potentially open a different super account the next job they start, and then people end up with 5 or 6 super accounts that they forget about. And paying life insurance on all of them. They didn't realise that they're doubling or tripling up on as well. So yeah, super is a big one because it is where a lot of people's money is. One of the big ones is Australian Ethical. So they actually donate 10% of profits through the Australian Ethical Foundation. Since 2000, they've donated over $11 million. Which is largely focused on climate action, but not only. And in terms of their return, they're actually rated top 5 out of 53 super funds, according to the Super Ratings Fund Crediting Rate Survey as of June this year. So they're actually the fifth best in terms of return, just to show you that you're not having to sacrifice on the return by choosing an ethical super. So again, they have the positive screening and the negative screening, very similar to what we've discussed before, where we're talking about avoiding pollution and waste. They've got some other interesting things of marketing products and services in a misleading or deceitful manner, which I find like false advertising. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Armaments, got human rights, poor working conditions, low wages, all that kind of thing. And then the positive screening, their local businesses, workers, like unions and things like that. There's a lot of text, but you can read that on their website. And they have a lot of different funds to choose from, so I couldn't even include them all on the same page. I've just screenshotted the top of going alphabetically. So if you want to see all of the funds that they offer, that's on their website. And the reason that they offer different types of funds, you'll have some conservative funds. You'll see the returns are quite low, but they're really reliable. They're not risky. And then you'll have some other, there's a balanced fund that's kind of in the middle. There will be a high risk fund that has a much higher return, but it's riskier investments. So you can see there's quite a range of returns there, and some of them, they've got the returns from 20 years there since inception. You can see that top one since 1994. The balanced fund is from 1989, which is probably when they were founded. So a lot of different figures there to compare and a lot of funds to choose from, which is great to have that variety of options as well. Future Super, one of the newer ones. I get ads for Future Super all the time. The algorithm must know I'm interested in ethical super. They also have a negative and positive screening matrix, with the big ones that they don't invest in being fossil fuels, gambling, weapons, tobacco, and uranium and nuclear energy. Future Super actually have a downloadable document on their website that lists every single thing that they own shares in and how many shares. It's hundreds of businesses, but if you want to look through it, you can. I had a quick square that was quite interesting. So you can actually see exactly where your money is being invested if you choose to go through Future Super. They have 5 different funds that you can choose from. Again, we've got the high growth and then moderate and balanced. You can see that they vary quite a lot there. Most super funds on their website will have a 1 month performance. Usually they have a 1 year, a 3 year, 5 year performance, so that you can compare as well. 1 month is not usually a very valuable indicator of the performance, because it's just too short a time frame. Nobody's going to put their money in a super fund for 1 month and then pull it out. Like with super, we're talking about decades of our money being invested there. So I find that since inception, or depending how long, like Future Super is new, brand new, which is why the since inception also might not look as high as some of the since inceptions from Australian Ethical, because we're talking about the difference between starting in 1989 and starting this year. Very different lengths of time. Verve Super is an interesting one. It's a all-female founded superannuation and focused on gender equality. You can get a super fund with them even if you're a man or not a woman, but their focus really is on gender equality. I found it interesting, actually. Most of the ethical supers and banks have a focus on only investing in boards that have at least 1 female member on the board. So that's something that I didn't realise was in the kind of criteria for most of these businesses. But it's right up number one with Verve Super. They're listed companies with all male board directors. So again, quite a few things that they're focusing on: negative screening, positive screening. You can see there similar kinds of things that they're looking at there in terms of environmental, social, and governance. There's I think that's all of the what do you call it, portfolios that they offer. Gender equity, Australian shares, sustainable, high growth, balanced growth, moderate. As you can see, the high growth to moderate changes slightly there. Returns as of July 2025. I'm not sure when Verve Super was started, fairly recently, again, similar to Future Super. So the since inception, you can see, goes around 3% or 4.55. Yeah. I closed your super. Well, I guess these are new, these are kind of quite new super funds where we see just in the last couple of years, the market hasn't been doing so well. Whereas, yeah, going back to Australian Ethical, that's been operating for quite a few decades, you can see some of these returns are up at 10%, 12%, 13%. So it really, that's kind of around the 5-year or 10-year return. So the market kind of like goes up and down in a bit of a zigzag. So with super, you're really wanting to look over decades of return rather than years of return, because it's not a very reliable indicator of, you know, the last month, some of these are, you know, 0.7, whereas the last 6 months, 3.5, the last year, 6.4. So the further back you go, the more reliable it's going to kind of show you, because it's averaged out. Great, yeah, thank you. Oh, well, we're up to our final section, which is talking about direct investments. And I'll go into this in less detail because there's more detail to cover in a way. I wanted to start by kind of just looking at the different types of direct investments that we might be talking about. So shares or stocks is investing directly into a particular company or business. And it's impossible to list all of the businesses that we could choose to do that with. Although if you go to Future Super, their Excel spreadsheet's a good place to start probably. But you might choose. So for example, I actually have shares in a business called Hero Packaging, which is the home compostable mailing satchel that I used to use for my business. I ran my own business for 10 years, and I loved their product so much that when they listed themselves as a public company, they asked for investors, and I thought, well, yeah, this is a business that I believe in and I want it to exist. So I think I invested $1,500, I think was the kind of minimum, not a huge amount of money, but I thought, yeah, this is something that I really want to exist in the world. It's an ethical business. It's run by 2 women. I've used their product. It's a good product. I want to directly invest money in this business. Yeah. 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 And often with this, when we're talking about ethical investing, I wasn't necessarily thinking, oh, this is a really good investment, I'm going to make a heap of money here. It was more, this is a business that I want to support, I want it to exist, and if it makes me money, great, and if it loses me money, okay, but I've helped them, I've supported them in expanding. So that's the top one. The second one is bonds. Bonds is lending money to a business or government. So a lot of people are into buying like Australian government bonds, where basically you're lending the Australian government your money to do their thing, build our roads and the infrastructure and all that kind of thing. And they basically pay you back with interest. So that's basically what a bond is. So that's if you believe in the government, some people don't, but most of us want to invest in the infrastructure of our country or our town or where we live. That might be a way that you think, oh yeah, that's an ethical way that I want to lend my money to the government to do what I want, to do what they're doing.
Tell them then that you want them to support the library with not greyhound racing or something.
Not really, unfortunately. So it might depend, but most people would consider it an ethical investment to invest in the government. Mutual funds are a pool of money invested in multiple places, so similar to the mutual banks that we've been looking at. ETFs are mutual funds that are traded on the stock exchange. I'll be talking about ETFs in the next couple of slides. Exchange traded funds. They're kind of pools of shares. So you're not investing in a particular business. You're pooling your money with other people into, well, we're going to buy shares in these 10, 20 different businesses, but they're all ethical, and some of them will make money and some of them will lose money, but overall it should average out that they make money. Commodities is buying physical items like gold, silver, buying into precious metals, or livestock, buying a cow or a sheep or that kind of thing. Whether you consider those things to be ethical is completely up to you and your ethics and how you do it. Cryptocurrencies are another direct investment. I don't consider them to be ethical. They're kind of a very weird thing that they started out as one idea and they've morphed into this completely other thing where people just play them trying to get rich quick. And the way that cryptocurrencies work is they require a lot of power and water to keep them going and create them. So it's a bit like AI. The actual resources that it requires are so large that I don't think you could consider a cryptocurrency to be ethical. If you're worried about emissions and water usage, I don't see how you could ethically invest in cryptocurrencies, but I wanted to list them there because they're an option. And then the other one, especially in Australia, is real estate. And whether that's considered an ethical investment is also another thing. And it's such a broad kind of topic. There's a very big difference between owning your own home and putting a lot of work into that, or buying a block and building a house and really putting love and effort into creating a house and then maybe selling it for profit. That's very different to being a property developer that builds a whole bunch of really low quality housing that's going to fall down in a couple of years and trying to sell it off for maximum profit. So the actual ethics of real estate is a huge kind of debate or spectrum, I guess is the word I'm trying to look for. It's a big spectrum and could be ethical depending on how you're doing it. Most of the time, most people would not really. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Actually, I should have got the stats on it's some alarming percentage of houses are owned by a very small percentage of people. And a lot of people would consider that cannot be ethical to be a landlord. That's a bit of more of a dicey debate. Some people say, oh yes, if you're charging reasonable rent and you're keeping the property in good condition and you're doing maintenance and things like that. I know plenty of people that are very concerned about being ethical people and they are landlords, and then there are other people that just say absolutely not, there's no way you can be ethical. So that's a bit more of a debate. Yeah, that's an individual thing. Yeah. Yes. Yes. And I think that's the thing, to be an ethical landlord, you basically should be making no profit, because you should be taking all of the rent and putting it back into maintenance of the property, the rates, property tax, all of that kind of thing. So considering real estate to be an investment, just that idea of thinking of it as an investment is questionably ethical. That's a big topic, and I'm just going to leave that there. To be continued. Maybe that's another smart living topic. But I just wanted to show a couple of graphs on ETFs, because the exchange traded funds is quite a popular. It's gaining a lot of popularity as a way to invest in shares rather than investing in a particular company. Investing in these kind of groups of companies. So this is the highest 3-year returns Australian broad-based ETFs. I think I got this off CanStar website. These are just all broad-based ETFs, which is just kind of, there's no one particular focus, but as you can see, the ethically conscious, Vanguard ethically conscious is actually the second highest in that 3-year return. I believe this article may be from a couple of years ago, but I just wanted to show it as an example that even when we're talking about just the top of everything, no particular, what's the word, baby brain? No particular focus, we see an ethically conscious as the number 2. So we're not necessarily making any sacrifices investing ethically. And then this one I found, this is from 2021 from CanStar, top 5 ethical exchange traded funds performance over 12 months. We're seeing these ones with 37% return. Now, obviously that was, you can see the 3-year return and the 5-year return where it's averaged out. This was a 1-year return in 2021. But we can see we've got some really high returns there, and these are all ethical funds. So responsible investment, sustainable equity, sustainability leaders, ethically conscious. So I just wanted to show those, not to promote anything in particular, but just to show you that we can be talking about really high returns, even when you're choosing the ethical investment focused funds. And most of these are places where you can actually, so Beta Shares, for example, you can get a Beta Shares app on your phone, or go on their website and directly invest. You don't have to go through a financial planner. You don't have to go through a broker. They don't charge any brokerage fees. They just charge there's like an investment fee. I can't remember what it's called. Yeah. But they don't charge any brokerage fees. So a lot of these are really accessible for people, which is why they're gaining in popularity. There are other micro investment apps, things like BREAZE, if you've ever heard of BREAZE, that you can just get an app on your phone and you can invest in these responsible and ethical funds, and they will put your money towards these kind of ETFs. There's a whole lot more that I could talk about, but it's really just such a big topic that I've just tried to give a taster. Again, I'm not promoting any one particular thing, but just to get you thinking about the options that are out there. A good website to check out is the Responsible Investment Association of Australasia. I mentioned them earlier in the presentation. They have accreditation, so banks, super, financial advisors, they can get accredited with the RIAA, and they'll have a little badge, a little logo on their website saying that we have been confirmed as through the RIAA as an ethical investing association. Market Forces is the other really good one to go to compare banks and super. They have those comparison graphs where you can look at exactly who's investing in what. Their ethical bank versus unethical bank, there's heaps of banks that are unknown, listed as kind of like we don't know what they're investing in. And their real big campaign is for people to contact these banks and say, what are you investing in? Tell us what you're investing in. So if you go and look for your bank that you're banking with, and if it might be listed on the, yep, all good side of things, and it'll have a green light and it'll show a little bit of information, or it might be listed as a, we don't know, contact them as a customer and say, hey, we want to know what you're investing in. And the same with super as well. So they have a really good comparison graph on the super side of things as well.
And my record every month.
Yes.
Don't ever contact investing.
Well, yeah, no, that's an important point, actually. If you, from this presentation, you decide to leave your bank or leave your super, tell them why you're leaving, because that's the really powerful thing. That's how we send the message, because sure, they're not going to get back to everyone individually, but if they see people leaving in droves and all of them are saying we're leaving because we're not ethical, they will change. Yeah. Exactly that. Yeah, we are in control of this. They always talk about the market decides. Well, we're the market. We are actually the market. They depend on us. They can't make money without us. And the other one to look at is B Corp certification, which I mentioned a couple of times in this presentation about the banks being B Corp certified. That's another certification to look for when you're looking at different services as well. There's quite a few hoops they have to jump through to be B Corp certified. It's not the be all and end all. I will say I looked into getting B Corp certification for my business. It wasn't possible because I was a sole trader, so I couldn't prove that I was good to my employees because I didn't have any. So I don't know, I was working a few late nights and and not paying myself all the time, so I probably wasn't ethical of an employer to myself, to be honest. So again, not the be all and end all, but another really good one to look at. If they have this certification, it's a really good sign.